Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger seek sea access through Morocco after their exit from West African bloc ECOWAS. Plus, displaced locals in Goma, the Democratic Republic of Congo, urge authorities to help following a ceasefire agreement with M23 rebels. Thank you for joining us at this time. Welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Egypt, where President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has met with the chairman of Sudan's Transitional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, in Cairo. According to a statement by the Egyptian presidential spokesperson, Mohamed el-Shawawi, the two leaders discussed ways to enhance bilateral cooperation and support efforts to restoring stability and promote development in Sudan. Mr. el-Shawani also talked about power, railway networks, trade, healthcare, agriculture and industrial development as being the key issues both leaders spoke on, as well as Sudan's reconstruction efforts, regional developments and also efforts to ensure water security and to reject unilateral measures in the Blue Nile Basin. Foreign ministers of military-ruled Sahel states of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger have endorsed an initiative offering them access to global trade through Morocco's Atlantic ports. Morocco's state news agency reports that the foreign ministers expressed their country's position during a meeting with Morocco's King Mohammed VI in Rabat. The West African nations, run by military leaders who took power in coups in recent years, withdrew from the regional bloc ECOWAS last year and formed an alliance known as the Confederation of Sahel States. Morocco announced its trade access initiative in November 2023, and that was after ECOWAS imposed trade restrictions on these three countries. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, hundreds of displaced people that have been forced from their homes are asking for help from their government. Many are living in harrowing conditions as a result of the months of militant fighting in Goma.
Hundreds of displaced people are urging authorities to help them return to their villages and homes after months of militant fighting in Goma, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Children and parents living in makeshift shelters say they've been suffering and have been forced to take shelter in tents and camps after being forced to flee their homes, which have been destroyed during the conflict. Since January 2025, over 400,000 people have been displaced in Goma and neighboring areas, according to the United Nations. Last week, representatives from the DRC government and the M23 militant group have jointly pledged to halt the fighting as they work towards a ceasefire deal.
I remember the day we fled. We were in Sahel. It was the middle of the night. Everyone fled. There was no way to take our chickens, our pigs, or even our cows. We left everything behind, and our houses had been destroyed. There is no way to return until it's rebuilt.
Meanwhile, refugees at a camp in Burundi plead for assistance after torrential rains and flooding worsened their living conditions. In Rutana province, refugees scooped out water, pouring it into basins as well as shoveling muddy ground, with locals recommending the installation of drainage channels to prevent water from reaching their tents. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, reports that approximately 35,000 Congolese nationals flocked to Burundi since the beginning of February as the M23 group claimed control over Goma and Bukavu.
Well, staying in the DRC, more than 200 ex-combatants have been reintegrated into society in Butembo, and it's part of the DRC's government's disarmament, demobilization, and community recovery program. According to local reports, each candidate had to undergo biometric identification procedures before being officially reintegrated into society. This comes after the M23 group launched a lightning January offensive in North Kivu province, which saw the group capture major cities like Goma and Bukavu. In the meantime, the United Nations has reported that violence has seen hospitals and civilian infrastructure hit, displacing hundreds of thousands of locals in the process. The United Nations says it's deeply alarmed by U.S. airstrikes on Yemen on Monday that targeted a detention center housing African migrants in the Saada Governorate. The UN chief spokesperson Stefan Dujarric said the airstrikes pose a growing risk to the civilian population in the Arab country, including women and children. Mr. Dujarric adds that the UN is calling on parties to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians. Nearly 70 people were killed and more than 50 others wounded in the U.S. airstrike on one of the detention centers designated for African migrants in Saada province. The Interior Ministry of the Sana government said the shelter located in Saada's reserve prison was supervised by the International Organization for Migration, IOM, and the Red Cross. Yemen has long been a key transit country for migrants from Africa, mainly from Ethiopia and Somalia, trying to reach either Saudi Arabia or Oman. Well, no African country is yet to comment on the U.S. strike. Well, joining us now for more on this is human rights activist Olatunji Lanre Barua. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Network Africa.
Pleasure to be with you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you as well. Well, what are your reflections on the recent U.S. airstrikes that we've seen in Yemen that resulted in the loss of lives of dozens of African migrants?
It's very quite unfortunate and very saddening, and it's just one killing too many this time around. This is not the first time this is happening, and over time we've had many Ethiopians have been killed in that region, and I'm particularly worried that most international organizations, international community have not stepped in since to really rein in all the warring parties. Ethiopians are the major migrants who use this Yemen to travel to Saudi Arabia, and they've been at the they've been at the center of most of the killings in recent years. In 2022, about over 400 of the migrants were killed during the shelling by Saudi security forces. This was the United Nations investigation report, and about 600 of them were injured. Also in 2022, about 66 were killed by a strike by, I think also by the US government or the Saudi Arabian on the same detention center. 66 people were killed, 115 or thereabout were injured in 2022. And, the response of the Saudi authority and the US government was that that particular detention center was being used by the Houthi militants to build and launch drones. But still, it still leaves a lot of worries for me personally, because this could easily be a violation of the international humanitarian law, because you are not supposed to target areas where civilians are kept, or even detention centers are not supposed to be part of target areas during military airstrikes. And this is how it applies now. It seems like it only applies to countries who do not have backers like the United States and Russia behind them, because people are now violating international humanitarian laws that we. If a launch was done on that same detention center in 2022, The UN investigated it. They found that 66 migrants were killed. Most of them are Ethiopians. About 115 were injured. There was an attack, a cross-border attack by Saudi forces that led to the death of over 430 of these Ethiopian migrants. Also in 2022, we have not had enough outcry by the international community on this, and this one happening now again. And what we have had from the U.S. Central Command has been silence, and what they have said is that they just want to restore navigational freedom on the Red Sea, which is a very crucial shipping line for global trade. But that still aside, there's a lot of humanitarian violations about to happen for this to be sustained.
Well, aside the international community, we're yet to get any response from any African leader. And just like you've pointed out, even though the identities of those who were killed, we're not sure of which countries they come from. But Ethiopia has been in the forefront of this. Shouldn't African leaders, respond more vocally to the loss of African lives in this U.S. airstrike?
Yeah, African leaders on one hand in one box, and then the Ethiopian government also, in another box. Also, I think we have some sprinkling of Eritreans also among the migrants who use that channel. I'm particularly disappointed with the Ethiopian government, irrespective of the crisis they've been saddled with, the domestic civil issue that's caused the destabilization, across the country in recent years. But still, evacuation could have been, done, and certain negotiation could have been done with the Houthis to release the Ethiopian migrants, back. Those who are Ethiopians, those who are Eritreans should be released back to their home government. Nigeria has had to evacuate its citizens from, North Africa, especially those who are kept in detention centers across that region. So other country needs to also step up and then repatriate their citizens. But, one of these also, you also have to look at it. The violations are not just also, possible violations are not just also against the U.S. government launching its attack from the USS Truman on the Red Sea, or the Saudi forces who are also launching attack against the Houthis. You also have the Houthis who are using migrants in their detention camp. They are using them as a source of revenue. They move them across the border into Saudi Arabia, raising tens of thousands of dollars every week. It's a trade for them. It's also a money generating practice for them, which is also unfair human practice. It's also a violation of international humanitarian law. But specifically, this is a point where African Union cannot afford to always look away when this kind of thing happens, especially when it's not happening on the continent. If it's bad enough that an African is killed unjustly in any part of the world, but when you have tens of them being killed under a missile strike launched by the United States against a rebel, and particularly on a detention center housing African migrants, I think it's disappointing that we've not had some strong reaction from the African Union and particularly the Ethiopian government.
Yes, and this kind of incident highlights the complexities of, conflict and migration. But what role can the African Union, African governments really play in advocating for the protection of these African migrants?
A lot of education for, Africans who are trying to cross over to other countries, very key, very important. And also, the African governments have to take ownership if their citizens are stuck in another country, and seek bilateral arrangement through which they can repatriate these people. You can't have Nigerians in detention center in Libya. You can't have Ethiopians in detention center in a war-torn territory like Yemen. I think African leaders need to step up and educate their citizens much more forcefully, and also move much more responsibly, to some of these crises. We have to move at a faster pace than what we are doing right now. We've not even had the reaction from, the Ethiopian government, from the African Union, but we need to be more proactive. And this thing has been going on for several years, and it is no longer news that, Ethiopian and Eritrean migrants are being kept in detention centers in that region. And this, would have been something that those governments would have moved in good time for a bilateral solution for them to be repatriated to their home country.
Human rights activist Olatunji Lanre Barua, thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me always.
Let's take a break now on Network Africa. Still to come. Making history, Ghana's under-15 girls and Tanzania's under-15 boys team crowned CAF Schools football champions. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Nigeria and China are seeking next-level relations with each other, exploring new business models to deepen partnerships using the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation. The second summit of discussions held in Lagos at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Though not as elaborate as the summit in China, the FOCAC in Nigeria aims to achieve the same purpose: stronger China-Nigeria partnership, which will in turn produce a stronger China-Africa relations. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, reports.
This is one of those diplomatic events gradually becoming a regular at the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs.
Our badges around the country.
This time it's the Chinese delegation led by the Consul General Yan Yuqin, representatives of the Lagos State government, members of the diplomatic corps and business thought leaders participating in the second Lagos Forum on China-Africa Cooperation Beijing Summit. The theme this year is exploring new paths for China-Nigeria and China-Africa cooperation.
We are honored to welcome you to the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs.
Declaring the summit open, NIIA Director General, represented by the Acting Director of Research and Studies Department, Professor Ifem Ubi, says there are areas of relationship yet to be explored, and Africa needs to change the current state of donor dependency.
We should focus on long-term sustainable impact rather than short-term projects. This is the purpose behind the Lagos Forum. It is not a forum for courtesy call or echo chambers, but for honest dialogue through analysis and practical visioning. As we convene in the esteemed chambers of the NIA, where we are all seated, Nigeria and Africa's foremost think tank in Lagos will stand at a crucial juncture in the trajectory of Nigerian-China relations.
The Chinese Consul General Yan Yuqin celebrated 54 years of partnership with Nigeria before addressing current global realities such as the trade war with the United States. She emphasized the necessity of development for all countries and not the rights of a few.
China has always advocated for an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and is firmly committed to upholding international fairness and justice.
She then highlights the future of China-Nigeria relations using the acronym BOND: Build, Open, Nurture and Deepen Relations.
For the future of China-Nigeria cooperation, represented by the four letters B-O-N-D. Firstly, B, build. Jointly build a high-quality Belt and Road connectivity network. China is ready to continue working together with Nigeria to deepen infrastructure cooperation in key sectors such as transportation, energy, and telecommunication. We are taking projects like the Lagos-Ibadan Railway, the Lagos Rail Mass Transit, and the Lekki Deep-Sea Port, and so on.
Representing the Lagos State government is the Commissioner for Commerce, Mrs. Folashade Ambrose Medebem, who presented what could be referred to as the perfect sales pitch to any investor in the state, describing Lagos as a 21st century economy.
As we reflect here today on the outcomes of the recent FOCAC Beijing Summit, Lagos State aligns strategically with the commitments made, particularly in areas of infrastructure, financing, industrialization, human capital development, and trade expansion. We see immense opportunities to further our collaboration with China, leveraging platforms like FOCAC to drive significant growth, significant investments, technology transfer, and sustainable growth.
President of Goods Made in China Importer Association, Mr. Charles Udelgania, drives home some hard truths.
Finance is power. The Chinese government empowers their enterprises to be competitive. We do not have such. I appreciate the infrastructure developments coming in. That's good. But we also need to be empowered financially for us to compete, for us at least to produce toothpicks we use after eating. It's important. If we cannot do that, then let's open our doors and bring the Chinese who have access to finance to come here and help us produce some of these products, and we will export from here to other nations, at least the African market.
A visit to the Chinese corner at the library of the NIIA ends the morning session. The corner was opened on December 31st, 2024, and is open to all. Amarachi Ubani, Channel Television News.
And finally, Accra erupted in celebration last weekend as Ghana's under-15 girls team clinched their maiden CAF African Schools Football Championship title, defeating Uganda 2-0 in a spirited final at the University of Ghana Sports Stadium. Elsewhere, Tanzania's under-15 boys also retained their crown, edging past Senegal in a nerve-wracking penalty shootout after a tense 0-0 draw. The drama peaked as Tanzania's goalkeeper saved a crucial penalty, sealing their victory before both teams received trophies from Ghana's President John Mahama and the CAF President Dr. Patrice Motsepe.
We first of all thank CAF for organizing this platform for us to show us our talents and to display to the world the talents we have in us. We really thank them so much for organizing this. We are all from different countries. We don't speak the same language, but as we come here, we are able to learn each other's language so that when we find ourselves in their country, we won't be faced with any language barrier.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.